We were down and out, desperate for either team to come up with something positive, and they both come up with underdog wins yesterday. Let's start with the Giants because we will now be referring to Big Blue as Daniel Jones and the New York Giants from here on out. It's no longer just the New York Giants. It's now Daniel Jones and the New York Giants because he was the headliner. And yesterday, he really was great. He's actually had 3 really good games in a row. But yesterday, passes for over 400 yards. You could tell, Moose, that the Saints were making it a point to try to take away Daniel Jones running the football. You know, they know that he's dangerous there. They made him beat him with his arm, or tried to, and Jones did deliver. We were wondering when we'd see the chemistry between him and Kenny Galladay. Well, Galladay, 6 receptions on 7 targets, including the 28-yard gain on the game-tying field goal and the 23-yard catch on the game-winning touchdown in overtime. Galladay, Daniel Jones, amazing. And, of course, we'll get to Saquon Barkley in a bit. But yesterday was a day for Daniel.
Oh, no question. It's really, to me, it's all about number 8. It's, you know, the questions coming into the year, those that we're talking about, you know, this being a big year for Daniel Jones, a prove-it year. Mm-hmm. He was not the problem against Washington. I understand everyone looks at the fumble against Denver. That was bad. He could have done a lot more against the Atlanta Falcons, obviously. Yesterday afternoon down in New Orleans was his come-to-Jesus moment. Down 11, 7 minutes to go to orchestrate the drives that he did, to get that game into overtime, to have the game-winning drive in OT as well, to do it more often than not on his arm, to make use of the weapons that you do have, whether it be young Joker or Kenny Galladay, and doing it without Darius Slayton, doing it without Sterling Shepard, getting Kyle Rudolph into the mix offensively. You saw Evan Ingram as well. I mean, Daniel Jones is not the problem. Daniel Jones is the answer at the quarterback position for the Giants. The Giants felt it. Sterling Shepard told people before the start of the year, if you don't see it, you're absolutely blind. Well, he's proven out to be correct as well. So all the naysayers out there about whether or not Daniel Jones could play in the National Football League, well, yesterday was a moment. And all those people have got to shut their mouths here moving forward, because he is a starting quarterback in the National Football League. He is the Giants franchise quarterback. He showed it yesterday down in New Orleans. He continues to show it. You're no longer concerned about when he drops back to pass, whether or not it's going to be an interception. That, to me, has gone by the wayside. I have full, complete, and utter confidence. And to see the chemistry, whether it be with Galladay, whether it be the reaction after the touchdowns with Saquon Barkley, whether it be in the huddle, you know, the emphatic nature of Daniel Jones shows you a little bit of a different feel for his personality on the field as he is off the field. Yesterday was his big moment, and good for him, because you root for guys that, you know, when, you know, backs up against the wall, have got to go out there and show in his 3rd year. And you know what? Daniel Jones, through the first month of this season, is showing it.
We were always wondering. Well, first of all, I'm wondering, are you now going to buy into Danny Dimes? Because you've been so against that. Well, okay.
No, I am not.
I mean, I'm giving you the opportunity here. You're saying that Jones is a player. You're saying that he's the guy. Yet
Daniel
won't
Jones
get on
doesn't
board.
even like Danny Dimes.
Well, but he trademarked it, so he gets that there's a value to it. But the thing is we were wondering when it was going to look like a really competent offense. I'm not saying that they were like, you know, blowing the doors off of anyone yesterday, but that was a really tight game that they're playing on the road in hostile territory where they actually quieted the crowd for a lot of that game. You know, the defense was much better, but the defense still was allowing, you know, New Orleans to go down and score. I mean, those Taysom Hill touchdowns, that was tough. And, you know, there's a lot of things to like about what the defense was doing because it was much better. But they needed Daniel Jones to step up on the road, tie that game, and then they get the coin toss, and then they're able to win it, and you don't even allow the Saints to get on the field. Like, that's what I really loved about it. We can talk about, you know, the aggressiveness, the explosive plays were there, and especially to John Ross and then obviously to Saquon. You have those kind of explosive plays. Doesn't help anything for, like, your red zone production. You know, those numbers are still going to look really bad for the Giants. But those explosive plays are just game changers, whether it's keeping you in the game, not allowing a blowout to happen, or whether it's, you know, trying to make a feverish comeback, which they ended up doing. I said the Giants are a bad red zone team. They're a bad fourth quarter team. Well, red zone, it was a little, you know, they're still not great, but it was a little deceptive because they had those long touchdown runs and passes. But fourth quarter was where they needed to get better, And they showed that yesterday. Again, not perfect. A Saquon Barkley fumble and Kyle Rudolph doesn't recover it, and maybe we're having a totally different conversation. But they were much, much better in the fourth quarter. Poised, too. You know the other thing, too, about
Giants
Daniel Jones.
Giants need to win a game.
But here's the thing about Daniel Jones.
Giants need to find a way. Nothing was perfect yesterday.
No.
I get it, and we're not all of a sudden looking at the Giants as being a Super Bowl contender in the NFL. They're 1-3. Everybody in that building, everybody on that team, they needed to find a way to win the game. This is not about meaning. They needed to win a game. We can look at individual storylines or whatever. Judge needed to win. Graham needed to win. Garrett needed to win. John Mara needed to win. Daniel Jones needed a W. The guys on that defense, everybody and their mother, they needed to have the taste of victory yesterday down in New Orleans. It was such a desperate nature for this organization to find a way to win that game after what was the embarrassing loss last week at home against the Atlanta Falcons. That, to me, and now you build up momentum for the Cowboys this upcoming weekend, down in Dallas when that game kicks off at 4:25 on Sunday, where it is Dallas week. But they were desperate for a win, Maggie, and even though it wasn't all the way perfect, they found a way to do it. And it was the defense being helped out by a bad penalty on the New Orleans Saints on their last drive when they're down 3. That turns a 2nd and 9 into a 2nd and 14. The Giants are able to get them off the field. They're able to tie the game late, make up for the bad Graham Gano miss earlier on in the game. There are a lot of reasons why you feel good about the Giants here, but the offense looked a lot better, looked a lot more explosive. And I know their red zone offense, and we can get into the play calling of Garrett and running the sweep and the end around with Evan Ingram on 2nd and goal makes little to no sense. And Jonathan Vilma on the broadcast yesterday was basically very, very critical. Yes, I totally agree with that. It was a bad play call, but we've been looking for this offense to make it look a lot easier. And yesterday, they had big plays, whether it be John Ross, and give Ross a lot of credit for the heads up, realizing that he did fumble before hitting the goal line, hopping up and hopping onto the football into the end zone. But then getting the big play with Saquon Barkley after they forced the Saints to punt with under 7 minutes to go. And all of a sudden, with the 2-point conversion, it is a 1-score game. And then New Orleans had to do something offensively to extend that game, and they couldn't get it done. The Giants defense was able to get them off the field.
I like that there were, aside from, I just mentioned before, that Saquon fumble on the last drive of the game in overtime, which could have been disaster, but cleaner game. Cleaner game. And mentally, that's the other thing about Daniel Jones, if we want to just say that he was the brightest of the bright spots coming out of yesterday, not nearly making the type of mental mistakes that we saw in the first 2 years. And that's great because that's showing the growth, right? We were talking about when the game gets fast, can Daniel Jones meet the moment, right? Or does the game speed up on him too much? And I thought yesterday, again, not all perfect, right? Not all perfect. Not every throw is going to be perfect, but at least he was not making mental mistakes out there on the road, hostile environment that puts you behind the 8 ball, so to speak. I thought that was a lot of growth from Daniel Jones to be able to win a game like that. He'll say, obviously, the stat line got the interception. It was the Hail Mary before the half. He was playing a very good game mentally, and obviously he's got all the physical tools.
Yeah, he was great. He was great. So you wake up and you feel really, really good about the quarterback. You wake up and you feel a lot better about Saquon Barkley being that explosive playmaker at the running back spot. You wake up and, yes, Kadarius Toney, even though we joke around about young Joka and some of the stuff and some of the things that he's thrown out there on social media, Toney's a player. You could clearly see it his day with the ball in his hands. He can make guys miss. He's tough over as well, understands about. Here's the other thing you love. He knows where the first down marker is and is going to get there by hook or by crook. He also understands the game situation when they tried to the little trickeration where they were going to have him throw the football, realized it was not there.
Nope.
And you know what? Made about 4 guys miss to gain a yard on the play instead of running out of bounds or anything like that, where it ended up being, I think, 2nd and 9 after that play. So all of those things you like. Tony's a player. There's enough weapons. The Giant offense yesterday against Washington, that's what makes it so frustrating. And when you watch a game, say, against the Atlanta Falcons, you say, well, why weren't you more explosive? Why weren't you more aggressive? Because yesterday, the Giants offense, and maybe this is just a launching point for the rest of the way, but there's a lot to like about what this offense can do. And let's be honest, offensive line has not been an issue. It has not been an issue. They've had a lot of different variations of it. had a different variation yesterday. Former Raven center going out there playing guard. They did their job. I know they weren't perfect. I'm not telling you it's the greatest offensive line in the world, but they were not a problem yesterday. The Giants only had 3 penalties as a team for 25 yards on the road in New Orleans. There was a cleaner nature to that game yesterday, and they needed it because they needed all of it to force overtime and to have that big game-winning touchdown drive in OT.
Yeah, I think that on top of that, like the line in the pass blocking, I thought was good, right? The run blocking still a little to be, desired there, but obviously the Saints have a good defensive front, so you're going to pay for it in one way or another. But the pass blocking was good. I think what also helped that, Moose, and what made the offensive line look even better than they may have played yesterday, which is the Daniel Jones internal clock. You can tell he's starting to get that a little more. Now, there were times when people were just straight up in his face. I mean, Cam Jordan was getting around Nate Solder at the end of the game, like on the 48-yard field goal to tie it. He's 2nd and 10. I mean, Cam Jordan's just coming through the middle of that line, and he just had to throw it away. I mean, there were still some dudes on that Saints defensive line, and
they're not healthy either.
I thought that Jones is like that clock. Again, I'm talking about the game, not when a game speeds up, him meeting the moment. It just seemed like he had a much better idea. Like, he still locks in on guys a little too much. You could see, he kind of falls in love with like a receiver, and he knows he's going there and maybe doesn't do the whole progression, but the internal clock is much, much better than it has ever been. Like, he gets it. It's like 1, 2 out, if that. And I thought that really helped out his offensive line. We talked about this, remember, with the Jets a couple weeks ago, where you had Greg Van Roten talking about Wilson. You got to get rid of the ball. I'm like, wrong guy to deliver the message, but he's not wrong. That is a message for Wilson.
Well, Brady helps out his offensive line down in Tampa. He gets rid of the ball. He doesn't want to get hit. But that's also
Jones
an old
is starting
man.
to get that more than we've seen with him in a Giants uniform ever.
Well, and he's also willing to take a hit to deliver the football too, which there are not a lot of guys. Sometimes you see guys, throw and duck when they deliver the football. There's so much. Listen, for have a quarterback go and to have that kind of a moment. I know people are saying, well, Eli has to be down 11, 7 minutes to go on the road in New Orleans. I know it's not your prototypical Saints offense. If it was, that game might have been out of reach at that point, but it wasn't. And to be able to rally, get that game to overtime, and then to win it, and to have the positives of Jones, the positives of Saquon Barkley having 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards, 125 yards of total offense running and catching the ball out of the backfield, your defense to make a big play, a big interception, defense to get a stop when they needed to get the ball when you're down 3 at the end of the fourth quarter. And then you got to love Julius Peppers after they win the coin toss. The reaction is he's banged up. But we want the ball screaming. Take that ball, drive it right down the field, and Barkley to score the game-winning score. I mean, just the sense of relief on the Giants to win that football game is just unquestioned.
Yeah, I feel good. I felt good for Saquon Barkley because I can imagine how, I don't want to say relieved he must have felt, but I imagine he has to be feeling tons and tons of pressure, not just because he's coming back from this major injury. And it was easy to see that, he kept talking about how my body's got to catch up with my mind, or my mind's got to catch up with my body, or whatever. They just didn't seem like they were in sync. So to take one to the house like that, like he did, and how they bit on Ingram as the more shallow route and then the dig route, and Barkley's able to take it to the house, has got to feel great. And then, of course, Daniel Jones for the 2-point conversion. I mean, just book it. Like, that's going to be happening for the rest of the season because he's probably their best option there, to be honest. And then for him to score the game-winning, touchdown, as much as, we could talk about running backs and Barkley and his future and whether they should pay. I mean, all that stuff. I just felt really good for him yesterday to have that kind of a day. Again, almost fumbled the ball, almost had to wear the goat horns, but he didn't. Kyle Rudolph falls on it. Barkley says he owes him dinner, probably 2 dinners.
Yes.
And a couple of shavers. What does he do commercials for? Gillette? Maybe a lifetime supply.
It might be Gillette, yeah.
Something like that. Just throw it in. And, you felt good to see Barkley have that moment.
That was great. I mean, all the way around. We want to hear from you at 877-337-6666. What a...